McCann,
Here.
Cartwell,
Present.
Braun,
Here.
Picasa,
Here.
Guerrero,
Here.
Grubb,
Here.
O'Neill,
Here.
Marinovich,
Here.
Vasquez, Butler,
Here.
and McCurdy.
Here. Okay, with that, would you please rise for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance? Mr. Picasso, would you please lead us?
Yes, please, if you will, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, with that, we'd like to go ahead and get started with the joint meeting agenda. And first of all, we have a review of the Bond Oversight Committee appointment process. And does staff have any presentations?
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. There were some items, I believe, that were placed in front of the board's diocese. Those come from the Bond Oversight Committee.
Yes.
Mr. Marinovich, maybe you can.
Well, there.
I'm showing an item that has to do with the chair report, an item that shows some an email, and also an item that I believe is identified as BP 9223.
There were two items from myself, and there was an email from Kevin O'Neill that I'd submitted. It's not in the packet. That was really important regarding the bond committee selection process that I'd emailed Tom Calhoun's office.
That's the BP.
No, there was another one.
There was an email that was text.
So I don't know if there's a way to run it in, because I sent the email earlier. It's kind of important.
Well,
Copies, but
the other three items came from the Bond Oversight Committee. Is that accurate?
Of the three items, two came from the bond committee, the chair report, and the memo at the top says Cecilia Martinez selection process for new bond oversight committee members.
Yeah.
However, there was a third email that I sent Ceci Martinez separately that was supposed to be copied for the meeting. That if we can get copies before the end of the meeting, I think it's important that we do so.
I guess, Mr. Chair, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, this item here, did that come from the Bond Oversight Committee? It was placed on all the dioceses, so I believe it's in front of you.
Yes, it was an attachment to an email I sent to the board and copied you, Superintendent.
My
It is
reason,
that email that was not printed out, which would make it self-explanatory.
Mr. Chair, I guess my reason for saying that is, did the Bond Oversight Committee collectively want this shared, and was it discussed at a Bond Oversight Committee meeting?
Well, we discussed the selection process in detail, and this was
I guess without belaboring the point, here's my point. Point number one is, about 15 minutes before this meeting started, I came out here. I saw the three documents. I checked with staff to see if this item was discussed at your Bond Oversight Committee meeting. I was told that it had not. So my question then is, if it had not been discussed at the Bond Oversight Committee meeting, was it properly agendized, number one? Two, if it wasn't, why it's being brought forward for discussion? By whom is it being brought forward by? All of you have been made aware of the Brown Act, and I believe that by the board considering this without going through the proper process, the Brown Act is violated. Respectfully submitted.
Well, this isn't starting out too good. Look, this is a workshop where we're supposed to discuss openly our views individually as members. And getting in a debate over discussion about whether or not a Brown Act violation for an informational item that I submitted through Kevin O'Neill for this committee seems to be kind of petty. But with that being said, I think our efforts are better focused, given the amount of time we had, not debating this kind of picayune stuff, to talk about some important policy issues as it relates to the selection of the Bond Oversight Committee members. And that's-
Why don't you make your presentation then, and then we can begin the discussion?
I really primarily wanted discussion, but let me just say that to give you an overview, this item on the selection of the Bond Oversight Committee membership has been an issue, excuse me, virtually since I was on the committee, which was approximately a year ago. And the issue is, it's number one, it seems like it takes an inordinate amount of time to fill positions. And let me give you a couple of one specific example. Terry McKerney, there was a vacant position for months. And in August of last year, I was brought to my attention that Mr. McKerney had submitted an application in March. And we had a vacant membership, and Bernardo sends me an email, why isn't this person at least being interviewed and for a membership of the committee? So lo and behold, we call a special committee, a special meeting, and a big deal is made about it. So the issue number one that I want to make, it seems like it takes forever to fill positions. We've had 2 vacant positions now for quite a bit of time. Mr. Morris's position, he resigned. So that's the issue number one. And number 2 issue that we talked about at the Bond Oversight Committee meeting was that the interview process, of which I was a member, was, we had questions, and it was orchestrated by the district in terms of accepting applicants. We went through a process. We had 3 independent members interview people, and we ranked the membership, and lo and behold, the people, we had a board meeting several months ago in which Brian Clapper, who was rated the highest, as I recall, but it doesn't matter. He was very, very close to Vita Shamani. They were recommended by the committee to recommend for selection. And then there was a follow-on board meeting. There was the superintendent docketed an item in which only Vita Shamani was recommended for selection. And there was no real explanation of why Brian Clapper was not appointed and what. He went through the process. He came before the board. He had contacted me personally several times. So there's a process. The 2 points I want to make, it takes forever to fill positions. That was a concern raised by our Bond Oversight Committee. The second issue is the process seems to be where it was supposed to be set up, be independent, is that the superintendent gets involved in the selection process. He interviewed the applicants after the committee had interviewed and made a recommendation. And so we are an independent Bond Oversight Committee. We're a citizens committee, and the legislative intent, and if you read it, is that it should be sort of arm's length from the superintendent in terms of the selection and recommendation to the board of trustees. So those are the 2 primary issues I have as chair, and I don't know if any of the other... Yes.
Dr. Brand, my email was discussed at the Bond Oversight Committee. We didn't have it in front. It wasn't distributed to the members, but I brought up the important tenets that I had addressed in it and referred to the board policy as far as provisional appointments and how it was to be done. Board shall interview the candidates at a public meeting, accept oral or written public input, and select the provisional appointee by a majority vote. All right, and if that's good enough for the board members who represent the people directly, as do we, that is how this should be taken on. I then went on to speak about what I refer to as the lambasting of you by Ms. Lopez, and quoted you in your earlier, I think it was July 2011, explaining why you were pulling out of it and giving it to HR. But that didn't seem to stay that way, because with 2 recommendations to the board, only one of them was carried forward, and now we have none because you were coming up with that. And so that is the gist of our concerns with the process, because it isn't just how it's done and what missteps might be there. It is a perception, and God knows you're going to have to start cultivating that perception as if it were a reality in this district. So that was my concerns about this.
Mr. Bernovich and I had agreed to kind of allow a little bit of a back and forth, and so Mr. McCann had requested to say a few words.
Thank you, Board, for being here, and thank you, Bond Oversight members. I do appreciate your service to our district. And I had a proposal. I'd actually brought this proposal up prior. Believe it or not, Mr. Marinovich, these appointments had been a point of controversy even prior to you arriving at the district. And there was a point in time when we actually changed the process to the current one. I didn't support that. I had a different perspective because I felt that we needed to make sure that the interviews occurred in public and the selection process occurred in public. And this was the process that I'm going to, again, ask Mr. Brand to look at and get the consideration of the Board of Trustees at a later meeting. But essentially, the process goes through each candidate interested in applying for the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee would be required to complete an application, turn in a resume, and provide a conflict of interest statement. That'd be the Form 700. When a vacancy was declared, and from that declaration to the end of the application submission, we would have all the supporting documents and copies of that provided to all 5 Board of Trustees. From that, when we would then, all the trustees would be able to review all the information, and at the next publicly scheduled board meeting, each trustee would be able to nominate up to 3 individuals to come in for an interview. Those that received at least 2 nominations would then ultimately be allowed to interview. The board would be allowed to increase the nominations if they would like by a majority vote. At the next public meeting, the application, the applicants who were selected for interview would come before the Board of Trustees, and the Board of Trustees would interview the applicants. The questions would be asked in public, and the answers would be heard in public. I think this is a way we can make sure that it's transparent. Ultimately, everybody will submit their own application, their own information. All 5 board members will be included in the decision. It will be a democratic process. You have to have at least 2 board members to support you to actually get an interview, and ultimately, in the end, it would be a majority vote that would select the final candidate or candidates. I think this is something that would be utterly positive for our board, and that's what I'm going to be forwarding in memo form to Dr. Brandt. And just by the way, it's similar to what we used at the city of Chula Vista, and I served on the planning commission with Kevin O'Neill. He was selected by a similar process, and I was selected by a similar process.
Mr. McCurney and then Ms. Lopez.
Well, I guess first of all, I'm loud.
Feeding back.
I'm loud. I guess I'm the guy who kind of started this, and to put a little clarity on what Mr. Marinovich said. I'll turn it off. About my selection, I eventually went back to my parent organization, the Taxpayers Association, who I represent on the board, and asked them why I hadn't heard anything. So I don't know if that's what got the ball rolling. I hope it wasn't, because frankly, you shouldn't need that kind of outside pressure. But let me put my spin on this right now, and here's why I think it's, for a practical reason, we need to have these billets filled as soon as we can. That is, we made a conscious effort as the CBOC when we organized over the course of this past year to do what a CBOC is supposed to do, to have subcommittees and subdivide the work so we could really take our duties seriously. And we've developed that structure. I won't run through that structure now, but the fact of the matter is we don't have enough people now to fill in that structure. We're all assigned 2 or 3 subcommittees, including the work that we're able to do. And if you want us to serve this district and to do the job we need to do correctly, we need to fill our ranks out and get on with appointing people that we can rely on to help us do the job that we're supposed to do.
Ms. Lopez, and we'll go back to...
Mr. McCann, thank you for articulating the process that you would like to see as far as selecting the person for the CBOC. However, that used to be the process, similar process that we had before. And I believe that we directed Dr. Brand, and I don't have my notes with me right now, but on April the 12th, we discussed this at a very lengthy conversation in which we discussed the fact that we did not want to be involved, or the superintendent wanted, or the superintendent involved. And now I'm very concerned that because these 2 individuals came and applied for the CBOC to be COC members, now we want to change the process. Why did we not stick to the original process that we basically gave the directive to Dr. Brand to establish? And I believe the process, and Ms. Wessel, please clarify if I'm wrong, because the process went through HR, I believe, and that's exactly what Dr. Brand explained to us, that the process was that it was basically going to be given to HR, and once they screened out the applications and they saw the applications, that they were going to be interviewed by members of the community, the CBOC, and other people, and then they would select the person. And I believe that that's what the process that was followed until the names got to Dr. Brand, and that's where Dr. Brand interfered with the names that were given to him, which should have never happened because on April 12th, and Dr. Brand, please, I'm very courteous to you. I think you should also be courteous to me. On April 12th, that's why I read the notes, Mr. McCann, that it established the fact that neither the superintendent or the board members would get involved because of the same reasons that prior to me even coming on this board and you coming on this board, there were issues of with board members, I believe that with members of the CBOC being selective by the board members, and it, you know, I feel very awkward because I might not know these community members. I don't know if they're qualified. Even somebody can sound very qualified on paper, but are they going to be qualified to do the job that I feel that is needed for the CBOC? So I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Cartman, do we change the process any time that an issue like this comes? I don't think we should. That's my honest opinion. That's my opinion. But the process was followed, and the process was established by our staff under the direction of Dr. Brown. The process changed when these 2 individuals came forward. And just lastly, just recently, a week ago, I was asked by an individual in National City, actually I was told by an individual in the city, that they wanted to know why we did not select the individual from National City. And I said, it really didn't, it didn't come to fruition because we never got to see the applications or the names until later on. And that was the truth. I wasn't going to not tell the truth. But apparently what's being told out there is that the decision was made by all 5 of us, and that we selected the woman because we wanted a woman. That was not my selection, I want you to know. And that wasn't the directive that I gave to anybody, to Dr. Brand. So I just want to make sure, maybe somebody did, but I didn't. I just want to clarify that. And that we didn't want a gentleman or a man. So to me, that's very bothersome, Mr. Carter. Thank you.
Dr. Grubb and then Dr. Brand.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's interesting. I've been in this community almost 44 years. And and this ain't my first rodeo. I've been on a few other boards in my lifetime. And I know several of you who are the same age as my kids and went to school with them. So it's interesting to me that I think all of us who are here want the best for our children. That's the only reason we're here. We're not here for any other reason, but what seems to get in the way, and I've said it before, I didn't get a chance to say it at the board meeting because this last board meeting was so contentious. I just said, I can't figure out what's going on here. I don't understand it, why grown adults can't seem to agree. But you all seem to disagree with it. And that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be agreeing agreeably or disagreeing agreeably. And I don't see it here. And so, quite frankly, I would hope and I would pray that we do the business of the public's good work by agreeing to be perfectly upfront, perfectly transparent, and particularly looking at the process of what's best for the kids. What's best for the kids is to follow the framework that's been laid down. Not that I don't agree with Mr. McCann's new possibility of what he might propose, but again, it seems to me that brings back more of a control of the board over something that's supposed to be arm's length, with the board finally looking at it to make sure that we don't have an interloper here who would be bad for the process, and then passing on what human resources have done, going through their due diligence to put out the 2 or 3 or 4 best candidates, and then, hate to use the word, but the board rubber stamping it. So the other issues on the agenda items work the same way. It seems that we're in a contentious relationship. I would hope that all of us sit back and say, what can we do best for the community? What can we do best for the kids? And that means talking and working together as a team. There's no I or me in team. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Dr. Brand and then Mr. Butler.
About 23 months ago, when the board asked me to come back to the district, we put in place the delta that you see in the back of the room. And at the top of the delta is students. So I'm appreciative of the fact that Dr. you mentioned about doing what's right by the kids. And I think everybody's intent in this room is to hopefully maximize student achievement, motivation, and self-esteem, and to ultimately provide a better quality of life for the students, the staff, and the community of which we all serve. So as a role of superintendent, many of the things that we are responsible for and sometimes have to be the bad guy about is the process and procedures that the board has stated being followed and being followed to the letter of the law. And many times over the last 23 months, I've heard from members of this body claiming that the board has either violated or that members of the staff have not been transparent and not fully followed the policies of the board or the administrative procedures. So one of the